back to basics and tackle some of the fundamental points. But right now, Aaron, you have the floor. You can share with us, comfortably. And by the way, we're dropping all our honorifics. We just go by first name, huh? Right.
Thanks very much, Augustine. I don't want to take too much time because I'm really interested in hearing what all your questions are. But I'll tell you what I was struck by most when I was listening to Kun Mechai's PowerPoint presentation. And that's the fact that what he's trying to do is so deeply multidisciplinary. He was drawing from so many different spaces to create this entity that was the social enterprise. Drawing from the art of running a restaurant, bringing public health into it, how to grow vegetables, all of that coming together and creating this composite entity. And I think for me, that's really the essence of what social enterprise is about. It's not about saying there are deep boundaries between what governments do and what the private sector does or what the people sector needs to do. But it's drawing from the strengths of all of them to create a very coherent and cohesive whole. And I'm reminded a bit about the bird, the magpie. I don't know how many of you know about what magpies do when they create their nests. But magpies will create nests out of anything. They fly around and they'll grab a bit of wool from somewhere, a twig from somewhere else, a tree, and then they create this nest at the end of it that is a composite whole, but it's made out of many, many different parts. And I think the ability to draw from those many different areas is critical, which means for the young social entrepreneur, the only thing that I can suggest to you is to keep being continually curious about all the different fields you could possibly draw from. There really are no boundaries for where you can get the best inspiration. Sometimes you will get inspiration from something that is closely related to what you're doing. Like you might want to run education and you'll get inspiration from a school. But at other times, you will find inspiration from all sorts of other places, alternate industries or alternate settings. And I think when we are able to do that and draw the most interesting connections between them, that's when you get really powerful enterprises, whether it's Apple or what Muhammad Yunus did with the Grameen Bank when he combined micro loans with traditional finance principles. I'll leave it at that for now, and I'm looking forward to all the questions and hopefully comments that you'll all share with us.
Oh, it's coming in, Aaron. Already the first SMS is in. So actually, I was sitting next to, I'm serious. So I was sitting next to Aaron, I kept asking him, so can we grow this on our HDB flats? Can we grow this on, if Suntec didn't have this crazy roof on the top, and it was flat, can imagine what we could have done on the top. So maybe it's a whole mindset change. I hope there's some architects in here, and we can always talk to them. I have a few things I want to bring up with architects. But thank you, Aaron. And to plant this question in our panel's head, the first question is, would service social enterprise work as well? Singapore is not agri-based. I'll just plant it in their minds and then see what they have to say. Elim?
What do you want to know?
Anything.
Anything.
Actually, Elim, I'm tempted to even ask you now to tell them about the story that you shared about kids in Mexico and how they remember the whole story that we shared when we were with Andy Ridley over dinner.
Which one?
Where they all arrive from different parts and then they go through the whole business process.
Oh, Kidsania?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's just ideas. Actually, I'm very inspired. Every time I come for a session like that, I have 1,001 ideas. I want to go back and start a business. I want to do mushroom. I want to do maybe mushroom soup, grow mushroom, grow tauge, start the cabbage. I'm just wondering, if I do the cabbages and condom restaurants, how many will come and eat and be members of the cabbages and condoms? Okay, restaurant. Okay, so we will try to do that as well. 1,001 thing. I'm very inspired, and yes, I shared about the Kidsania idea the last time, where it's from Mexico, and it's actually a very innovative thing that Singapore wanted to do it and take the franchise. It's actually a 100,000 square feet space where it's divided into 170 jobs, and each job is sponsored by a business. So when you go to, it's done in Indonesia now, a franchise in Indonesia. So when you go in, you check in at a counter, and kids are able from 5 years old to 16 years old is able to enter Kidsania, a kids world without adults. So they throw out the adults, and you go in there, you take a boarding pass, and you enter, and it's sponsored by an airline. And then you can either choose to be a pilot, steward, stewardess, or passenger. And when you're a passenger, you actually pay to be a passenger, but you're a steward, stewardess, you get paid. and you're a pilot, you get paid. So I see all these kids in your uniform flying the simulator, you know, and then you have this service staff as well. But when I go in there, you see kids in, their police uniform. You see kids, A&E department. Actually, they're experiencing all the different jobs. Because back in Singapore, when you ask a scholarship fund thing as well, and then we ask the kids, what do you want to be? And they only want to be teacher, doctor, and police. Oh, yeah. Only 3 jobs in Singapore when they're kids, because they don't experience the rest of the jobs. And can you imagine if we have a place, I think the challenge from Kun Michai is that can we showcase all the different social entrepreneurs and enterprises of the world. Can you imagine if you get all these people that, we can showcase? These are all ideas that you can pick up. And I'm giving the challenge to SIF as well. So they have a tough job. We want to bring this to Singapore as, because we want you to grab the ideas. And the idea is there. It's how you developed it and how you process it to become a social enterprise. So, the takeaway is you can Google that in Kidzania, it's called, and you can see the different type of businesses, and it's very exciting. And if we can do that in the experience of all the social enterprises, and every one of you can experience the different social enterprises, and then start to think how you can use that and develop your own social enterprise in wherever you are. I think that's very exciting.
Thank you, Elim. And the reason I invited Elim, and we go back a long way, to share that story about Mexico is because when she first shared it with me just after the last SIF forum, it really touched my heart. I mean, it's getting children to actually experience these jobs. And when Kun Michai shared about the 2 girls who went out and they were selling sausages, and they made it 5 times what they would have got on scholarship, it just struck me. And I said, okay, I got to get Elim to share this story. And that's what today's session is all about. And before we cross over to Willie, so I would really like to encourage you to, the second message, by the way, is coming in. You guys you love sending SMS. Huh? Maybe that's a Singapore thing, I don't know. But I hope we had some real warm bodies coming up to the microphones and asking us questions. But think about whether you can also help start projects in other countries. The first one was about, there are challenges obviously in the Singapore context, and we'll see what the panel has to say. But let me now just read the next question before I run out of time. Do you think the government plays a pivotal part in the setting up of a social enterprise? There are many students who have the passion, but they lack the resources at times. Do you think there must be, and then the message ends there. All right, maybe it was meant for me to add the words, but perhaps, maybe that or just ran out of time. But I don't know. If I exercise my prerogative as the moderator, do you think it's too much government and more of other areas coming in? But let's hear from Willie first.
Yeah, as I listen to Dr. Michai, can I call you doctor? No. Okay. I first heard Kun Michai about 10 years ago, I think, at the National Volunteer Philanthropy Center. At that time, he went by the name of Dr. Michai. So I'm so used to calling him that. But I've since I kind of followed what he's doing. And the message that he had at that time, which was that you make your own donations. It's just that I think today he's a lot more emphatic about it than he had been 10 years ago. And while I remain inspired by him and his successes, and I also personally support social enterprise, I actually do want to draw a caution in terms of the message, which seems to come across today, which is like social enterprise is the end-all and be-all of social change. In my view, right, not all solutions to the social sector are market-based solutions. There are a lot of causes in which it's not a question of market, it's not a question of business. It requires advocacy, it requires change to policies, it requires changing mindsets. And there's some things which actually just require handouts in the short term to fix an ill in the system. So not everything lends itself to social enterprise. And if you look at the history of social enterprise, I think beyond some of the very large successes like the PDA and BRAC, most social enterprises, the studies have found, actually have not been very successful. They have not kind of achieved the objectives of what they set out to be, especially on the business side. And when you strip away some of the funding and the handouts that were given, actually they perform a lot worse than they might actually be. So I think we have to kind of go back to basics and say, what's the whole purpose of social entrepreneurship and encouraging many of you, the youth of today, to be more socially aware and to be more action-oriented in that social awareness. It's about creating, positive social change in society. And that positive change in society, I think, should play to our respective strengths and interests. Not all of us are geared out to be business people or necessarily are good at business. We should have the heart to go after the cause that is important to us, that we're interested in, and find what's the best tool. Sometimes the best tool is business, but it may not always be, and I think we should bear that in mind.
Thank you, Willie, and I'm actually quietly smiling because now we have a debate, all right? And that's what we need. So, and by the way, I highlighted this. The profiles of all our panelists are here, so please refer to this at any time for those of you who tuned in late. And before I go to Kun Michai to respond, of course, I look forward to his response. Another question, how to draw a line between commercial and social enterprise needs some clarity. So, 3 questions so far, and my job is to help remind the panel whenever we kind of forget one of the questions, we'll come back to it. But and we have another young person here on the, go ahead, you want to pose a question?
Testing, okay. My question is basically for business to be viable, I believe that it has to differentiate itself to attract consumers, like what Kun Michai said, that the consumer will not purchase your product just because it's a social cause. And so perhaps a business might need to do that by creating barriers to entry for the competitors. The best example I can think of is Apple suing other companies for patent infringements. But I also believe that having more social enterprises would make a society a better place. How do we then reconcile the notion of, survivability of your business together with, with that?
So, Kun Michai, I mean, and what Willie said, it's not the be-all and end-all, and it's not a level playing field out there as well. And you said you need to give them a good product. Would you like to add on?
A few interesting ones. I think the first one, I think that we have some...
Kun Michai, could you please take the microphone? Oh, okay, all right.
Unless the technician is asleep, it should be all right.
Yeah, he's pumped up your volume.
He's awake. All right, thank you. The difference to me between social enterprise and business is very simple. As a business, you distribute your profits, but in a social enterprise, you do not.
But you do pay your staff the salaries.
Oh, you pay people because they can't live on air.
Hopefully, they don't pay themselves too big a salary.
Oh, it should be public. Actually, what I would like to see is all social enterprises have their accounts on the web.
Okay, good.
So they know every detail.
Now,
how much money is being made, who gets paid what. We have nothing to hide. So
and just very quickly, Kun Michai, so I hope you're taking down these notes because that was an interesting challenge. Now back to the floor. Transparency. Are your accounts on the web? By the way, the mayor's office in London has their entire operating expenditure on the web. Even taxi fares, like where they went and what meetings they had. That's interesting for Singapore as well, right?
Coming back to the issue that Willie said that...
it's not the be-all or end-all.
Be-all, no. But before with that, you say Singapore is not an agricultural society. Now, that's where you're wrong. That's where you're wrong. Because you keep on thinking of agriculture in the old way with big Texan holdings. You can do a small amount. You ask people to grow marijuana, they don't use much land.
I warned you, this is going to be interesting.
So agriculture does not have to be extensive. It can be intensive and 40 meters by 40 meters. And you can use even the worst land possible. Rocks, no grass will grow on. That can be done. I'm not saying everyone can do it, but I'm suggesting that it be a first attempt by those who want to do social enterprise who have not yet come up with ideas. If you've got good ideas already, fantastic. But if you don't, try this little kindergarten guy, okay?
Kun Michai, so just very quickly, he did bring this up over lunch, and I asked Aaron, can we help the audience here figure out what's 40 meters by 40 meters? It's about 4 or 5 HDB 4-room flats. You got the idea, but I hope you don't turn it into a marijuana, Yes, please, Kun. Please carry on.
Okay, and the other one is what Willie said. I apologize for having given him the impression, he must have been half asleep, that social enterprises be all and end all of everything. It's never been. It's never the case. But it is good to try and help yourself. You ask any donor, if I just keep on asking and begging, as against, yes, I'd like some more, but I'm also trying to help myself. And I think you said that, well, a constant handout. In my case, in the 38 years, we have had only one amount of money coming, and it was not a grant. It was a loan at $65,000 in 1975. It was a loan, personal loan, because we had no collateral. But they were so surprised we paid back on time. When we got to half, they were so surprised that you can keep the other half. As it turned out, therefore, it was a half grant, half loan. So that's the system I'm going. In 38 years, we have only had that amount from the outside, and the rest of the billions of baht, billions, let me remind you, of baht, that has been generated from all the business enterprises. We didn't even get a grant in the beginning. We borrowed it, but it turned out to be an accidental half grant. But just to let you know, it doesn't have to be more. But I'm suggesting that those companies that give money or foundations must consider helping the organization that is the recipient have a social enterprise as well. So one day, some will help themselves a long way.
Okay, so it's not a company with a kind heart, but it's a totally different setup, as you explained in your presentation, and you're reinforcing it. And he has demolished your whole idea about whether you can have an agri-business in Singapore. You've got to think differently. And I've got 5 questions coming in as well. This is going to take us all night long.
Or go over to Johor and do it.
Yeah. You know, and we talked about this earlier. But let's take the question from this gentleman here. And sir, are you all right with your question? Are you all right with it?
I don't think it's been answered yet.
It hasn't been answered, so stand firm. We'll come back to you. But let's go over here. Right.
Thank you to all the panelists for your time. I just had one question, sort of following up on the distinction, or the at least semantic distinction between a commercial and a social enterprise, and also my compatriot's question about how we can sort of eliminate some barriers or sort of level the playing field considering the different objectives that are going on. But is there any way to nurture a social enterprise with tax incentives or create other kind of regulatory or financial incentives or structures that would support the emergence of more social enterprises or prevent social enterprises from becoming more sort of straight profit
Sure.
organizations?
I love this kind of panel. They're actually helping me out. I was about to throw it to Aaron, but Willie is jumping in. Yeah, carry on. So, Willie.
I think the 2 points. One is business enterprise and social enterprise. Commercial enterprise is very straightforward, right? It makes business, the money goes to the shareholders. The problem with social enterprise is it's not well defined. There are several flavors of it, which is where the confusion comes. There are several dimensions of social enterprise. One is where the products and services benefit a community which is in need. So, for example, if you source handicraft from poor women in underdeveloped countries who otherwise do not have a market, some people call that a social enterprise. Then you've got those where the employees are actually directly involved in the business itself, where the beneficiaries are involved. Then the other aspect of it, which is what Kun Michai refers a lot to, is where the profits somehow they find their way back into the community, either by growing the business or, in this case, funding a charity, a related charity organization. That third dimension is something which is of some considerable debate because there are organizations who call themselves social enterprises where the profits, part of it actually return to the shareholders, but they call it a social enterprise. Kun Michai does not, and that's why Muhammad Yunus came up with a term called social business to try and differentiate this group of social enterprises. Then in terms of financing and regulatory structures, I think we're in that state right now where both governments as well as many capacity building organizations are looking at ways and means to facilitate an environment, a legal environment, and a financing environment that allows social enterprises to be created.
This last point you're talking about is Singapore.
Right. In the US and UK, I think they're further ahead than anyone else. Actually, in Singapore, it's quite hard to create a legal entity purely for a social enterprise, which we don't have to get into the complexities of. Then from a financing standpoint, venture philanthropies and other people are looking at kind of hybrid structures where you got debt, equity, they call it patient capital, where you can fund a social enterprise with money that appears to be like equity, where the money either doesn't need to be returned or can be returned over a long period of time with either zero financing rate or at below market rates.
Maybe somebody here, but of course Willie can add on to it, who's from the financial sector. I mean, I know for a fact that some banks in Singapore have created a social entrepreneurship section, and you can walk in and fill up the forms and get it. Aaron, you want to build on this?
What I wanted to add, actually, in response to both of your questions, is sometimes I think people fixate a bit on the social versus other forms of enterprise, and we forget to think about what enterprise itself means. You know, this theme here is nurturing generations of social entrepreneurs. What is it that characterizes entrepreneurship? I think that's an equally important part of this question. And if you think about it, Kun Mechai gave us the answer in his PowerPoint. He said, those people who take things into their own hands, who don't just wait for the answers to come, but who create answers. So rather than ask yourself, you know, am I going to be more social or commercial? I think the big question is, are you the type of person who is going to take things into your own hands, working, of course, within the bounds of what is legal? And you know, so I'm not sure about the marijuana option. But apart from that, you know, are you willing to say
medicinal marijuana.
Medicinal, yes, that's right. Rastafarians and all that, right? But you know, are you going to just say, I see a problem, I see a gap in the potential solutions, and I'm going to try and attack it in the best ways I can. And I'm not going to be bounded by what other people think is social or commercial or anything else. I'm just going to try and attack that. And if it means that I grow vegetables and grow different types of vegetables in the year, or I run a restaurant, or I do all of those things at the same time, then I'll do it. That is what entrepreneurial spirit is like. And if you take it like that, then I think enterprise actually is something that applies to all fields. You can be an academic entrepreneur. You can be someone who is an entrepreneurial journalist or an entrepreneurial civil servant, however paradoxical that might sound. But it is possible. We're trying to nurture those as we go along. So that would be my response, actually, that I think you can find spirits of entrepreneurship in lots of different places. And if you keep that in mind, then yes, government can encourage it, but not just through things like tax incentives, but also through creating a structure in which there are, you know, stable enough institutions where people can go about setting up these enterprises. I also think one important function that government or organizations close to governments can play is in creating communities like this, and working to ensure that all of you are mutually supportive of each other. And that kind of mutual encouragement of forming communities is critical, because I think if we don't have that encouragement, then at some point social entrepreneurs are going to get a little bit discouraged and will find that they don't necessarily have the sources of mutual support that they need.
If I can come in here before we come back to Elim and Kun Mechai, I just want to come back to you, not so much to ask you whether you agree or not, but are you an entrepreneur yourself? Are you working on something right now?
No, I'm in the part of the YSE, so I was just wondering if you want to, the ethics of, I want to make my business so uncopyable, or versus let people can copy, that's better for society.
Yeah, but I'm just being naughty now. So listening to all this, would you go out and start something on your own? Are you thinking about it? Yeah. And what would you like to focus on? I think what Aaron said just now was interesting. Looking into an area or a gap. Did I say that right? I hope I got, yeah. What would you look into? What area would that be? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I actually have a few. I'll not like take up time here. Yeah, but just wanted to find out what does the panel think about that?
Yeah, but what have you identified? What have you found an area?
Maybe just tell us one.
Yeah, just give us one.
Okay, fine. One idea I have is just tuition in Singapore, where many of the low-income children, they're unable to afford tuition. So what I hope to do is to match tertiary level students to these students who themselves, the tertiary level students, are also poor students. So we generate income for the students as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to drive at. So thank you very much, because I really wanted to, you see, one of the feedback, and thank you, sir, you can take a seat now. Partly also is to get him to, he's so nice standing there, and I already got two other people standing. But you see, we got, yes, sir, sure. Partly was also because we got your feedback from the last SIF forum, and some of you said it was a great discussion, but some of you also left without they said they didn't get enough firm ideas to move out, So we heard you. We listened to your feedback from the last one. That's why we're trying to make this one even better. And you see, this is a wonderful panel. They, I don't even have to prompt them. They want to come in. So, and I've got like 6 questions now on this system, and one is even on poetry and how to turn that into a social enterprise. Really good stuff here.
That one.
Yeah. So, and then we got people lining up to stand. So we might have to go on to a little bit later. But I beg your understanding. But let's. Really, go ahead.
I just take 20 seconds to answer your copyable, copyright question, right? A social enterprise is not just social in terms of its impact or the way it deals with its profits. A social enterprise is socially minded in each and every respect. And a part of that actually is that whatever you do is for social good, ultimately. And if you have something which is good, you should be sharing it with the world rather than trying to protect it. So open source, those kind of things is actually a part of being a social enterprise. So trying to patent the idea and the processes is actually contrary to the whole spirit of social enterprise.
Elim?
Yeah, so it depends whether you want to be commercially run or social enterprise, right? So, if it's really an idea that if you said social enterprise, then, by all means, I was talking about the cabbages and condom, and straight away Kun Michai said, I can come and I can do it for you, I can help you, I can take, because I was saying, will the parents start scolding me for starting a restaurant like that? He said, don't worry, I'll come and help you, right? And he's so eager to share, because as social entrepreneurs, we want as many people to take the ideas back to their own countries as possible. But even for IP, unless you have really a technology that you can IP, something that you can really IP, but otherwise it's very tough as well. And then if you IP as well, go and take a look at the lawsuit. How much money you're pumping in the lawsuit itself to try to go after the IP, and you're not sure if you're going to win it at all, right? And you spend so much time doing it, then you don't have time to do the other things as well. So there are a few things, like, for example, to be fully non-profit or for-profit social enterprise. But the whole thing is, you have an idea today. Why don't you share your ideas and get the experience of all the panel, and then you go back and you think. Because, the debate will never end whether you're going to be for-profit or not for-profit. It's where your heart lies. Because as commercially run, you think you want to be doing something for social sector and you want to start it. I tell you, you actually lose money for the next 5 years. And then you'll be... At this point, many of us will start with no pay or very little pay at the same time. Then it's better to work for somebody, right? So you have to start off today, especially with those who are in the YSE. I think Patrick Turner said, never run out of cash, right? You need cash. You need money to do all the things. First, start off with your idea. What do you want to do? And I think that the panel here is to share with you the ideas, all your ideas, whether it works or not. Because there are funds out there that can help you get started, right? And really supported part of the YSE fund.
You may not believe this, but I've been attending sessions like that. Actually, there's money out there. Trust me. It's you need to know how to pitch it.
Yeah,
but Kun Michai,
can I quickly add to that?
Yeah.
For Singaporeans, you have up to $100,000 out there for anyone, any age now, under the A Startup Fund. If you have a good idea, cannot be copied idea from somebody. So there is money out there, but we have to do roadshow to ask you to go and apply for the fund. So something is not very right. You have to be hungry for the fund, because the fund cannot be sitting there waiting for you, right? So
which is why I prompted Elim to share the Mexico idea, and which is why I started this session and I asked you to clap your hands and I planted that question in your head, should you have sex education in schools? Now you know where we're coming from, because I was preparing you for Kun Michai, because he's challenging you. Right, and I really want to give the man now a few minutes, very quickly, sir, this first round, and then we'll take a few more questions from the floor. How would you like to respond? Anything you'd like to pick on?
Oh, the point that was interesting was that do we need sex education in school? Well, we're having sex in school already.
Is this all being taped, by the way? So in case there's too much information for you, you can always watch the video
So why
again.
not have sex education as well? All right? I think it's pretty ridiculous to think that youth today are stupid and are ignorant. They need to learn, because all life forms on Earth are given birth to be interested, naturally interested in sex, from humans, animals to bacteria. You can't fight it. All right? Sex is good.
Singapore
All right?
needs to hear this, trust me.
Sex is good. Why? Because your mother had sex with your father like mine, and you were born. Imagine what a terrible world this would be if you weren't born. So go home and thank your parents.
And so now,
All right, now sex education is a very important element, and I believe in it as a citizen of the world. And I don't mind that I'm speaking this in Singapore. Because
now you
I'm
know
still a
why
human
I
being.
prepared you for this man. So Kun Michai, could I gently prompt you back to some of the other questions? Anything you want to respond to from the first round
Well,
of
the
questions?
first one,
I saw you writing quite a bit there.
The first one was that can social enterprises be involved in the service industry? Oh my goodness, yes. Whatever you want. Is the hotel industry service, tourism, rural tourism, all service. So many things. You have dance classes. Okay. Now that's one thing. Plenty of opportunities in every country, the service sector. And in fact, I've been talking to David Chime. He runs Mindchamp. Yeah? Yeah? He's trying to produce smarter people than you. And the whole point is that we're interested in doing something in school, but in two areas. One, to charge those who can afford. And then, second group, we charge just a little bit. And the third, we don't charge, but you must do community service. Like our school, the Bamboo School, we don't take your money. We want you to do something for society, for having the privilege of being at our school, designed, incidentally, by a Singaporean architect, Tay Keng Soon. And the whole point is that the parents pay by doing 400 hours of community service and planting 400 trees. And the students, for every meal they have at school, lunch usually, they must do 1 hour's community service. So they go out and teach primary school kids. They must walk and go to the village on their day off, and they must pick up garbage along the way. So there's 2-3 things. So there are many ways of doing a combination, you see. For those who, it's something quality, for those who can afford to pay, this is what we charge you. And for these people, we charge you just a bit. And for these, we don't charge you, but you go and help the community instead. So there are many combinations.
Thank you, Kun Michai. We'll come back to the panel. I'm going to do this, and please understand, all right? So we're going to take all 5 questions, all right, from the floor, and then we'll close it, because I got like another 10 here waiting, all right? So that should keep us busy. So let's start with you, sir, all right?
All right. Good afternoon. My name's Alfred. I'm going to bounce off Aaron's earlier question on the structure of support. In the US, when we tried to start a social enterprise cafe or a farm, we basically walk over to a neighboring city's social enterprise cafe, take all they have learned, and come over to our own town and start one ourselves. Same thing with farms. But when I tried to do the same thing, both in Penang and in Singapore...
I was going to ask you that question, so you tried.
Yeah,
right.
I tried. Well, I'm trying still.
Okay.
And, well, they basically gave me a strange look, like, why is stealing our trade secrets, you know? What makes you think I'm going to tell you and, you know, be a competitor to us? So my question is, how can we overcome these situations? And the second question would be, how can we set up a network of support for Asian social entrepreneurs?
Okay, so Cafe Farm, Penang, Singapore, and support. And your question, sir?
Hi, my name is Asim. I'm co-founder for Give.sg. And one of the thoughts I had in mind was, you know, I attended a conference by Thomas Friedman where he talks about eco-capitalism, basically, you know, using the, you know, power of capitalism to solve social changes. And that's very much in conflict, you know, with what Mr. Michai is talking about, you know, with social entrepreneurs not having, you know, the financial reward. So I just want to hear, you know, what is the rationale behind that? And if we were able to kind of overcome that, would we see a more systemic change in more people, you know, taking up social entrepreneurship rather than, you know, financial banks, say, for instance?
Eco-capitalism.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yours, sir?
Hi, my name is Akhtar Mohammed. I'm from Vancouver. And so I've been in Singapore for about 5 months. And one of the questions I have is, in a society such as Singapore, where the freedom of speech is somewhat limited in comparison to other liberal democracies.
He wants to know your name.
My name is Akhtar Mohammed.
Akhtar Mohammed. He's just being
Maybe
naughty.
it's the FIN number.
Well, you're talking. It's interesting. You're talking about freedom of speech. You have total freedom in this room, my friend. So speak your mind.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried after my question I might get like deported or something.
No, not today, not today.
I can't promise what happens tomorrow, but yeah, carry on.
It's okay. I think I've had a good time here.
Okay, can we please give this man a chance? All right.
Okay, so in a society such as Singapore where the freedom of speech is limited, how can that society honestly assess its situation to see what the problems are in order to formulate solutions? Because I believe the purpose of social entrepreneurs is to assess its society, then to see
Yeah, so
the
very
problems
quickly
and
now,
to-
I'm exercising my prerogative as a moderator. You heard the man himself, Kun Michai, challenging this audience, Singaporean audience, on sex education. Now, what's passionate for you? What do you think society is not paying attention to?
From my own experience, from being born and raised in Vancouver to my 5 months in Singapore, I've felt a lot of there's a lot of racial issues here that are swept under the rug.
Okay.
There's a lot of
And you think a social enterprise might help to, create better awareness?
I believe a social enterprise can create a space for people to come to discuss these things. Religion is another issue in Singapore that seems to be swept under the rug.
Okay, my friend, I will just invite you to... No, but that's a very good point, and I know some people here on the stage who I can throw that question to, but thank you. I can just imagine starting a camp for kids so you talk about race and religion, and see, Kun Michai is ready. Okay. Let's take the lady there, all right?
Thank you. My name is Christiane from Canada, and I have two questions. The first one is like, with an idea, what will be the basic steps to get it to be a success, like for a project?
To take a project from an idea
Yeah.
to the next level.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the second question was, I would like to know how you first did, Dr. Mikai, to get the population involved for your first optimization profit business type.
Population involved,
Yeah.
right? And actually that was one of the SMS questions as well. That's good. We're seeing some overlap. Thank you. And let's take the last lady and we'll close questions from the floor, all right?
Okay, hi. Afternoon, I'm Deborah, and I don't have a question per se, but I would like the panel's perspective on this, because I come from an arts background. I'm an arts manager, or management student, and I find that there's a situation in Singapore in that the arts is, I find, a really good sector to develop social entrepreneurship because of all the grants that are available, the policy making that's developing. But at the same time, I've identified two key problems or difficulties in applying social entrepreneurship to the arts. The first being that there's a certain difficulty in measuring the benefits of arts for the matter that, I'm not talking about museums here, I'm not talking about institutionalized places, I'm talking about alternative arts places that support emerging artists. So, especially because investors want to see, benefits, they want to see benchmarks, etc., etc. And the second problem is that these art spaces or the art process per se, many a times it's very intangible. They are very process-oriented. So I'm caught in this dilemma that, there are opportunities. Some organizations do have business models as well. But at the same time, there are these difficulties as well. So I'd like the panel's, opinion on whether social entrepreneurship can be applied to the arts.
Thank you, dear, and we'll have to stop it there. Thank you very much. You're all really nice, wonderful people. You actually took the time to stand there and wait your turn. So, panel, I'm going to just invite you to, you don't have to respond to all. You can pick anyone. Let's start with Aaron and then work our way down.
Okay. Quick thought on Asim's question on capitalism. I think capitalism itself is not a static concept. It's continually evolving. If you think about what the big global consulting firm McKinsey is doing now, they're actually thinking about what kind of new forms of capitalism and democracy need to exist to meet current human needs. So my immediate thought would be to not assume that eco-capitalism is necessarily two things that are irreconcilable. I think they can live together and they can mutually support each other, because as people get more and more aware of eco-trends, I suspect consumers are going to become much more informed and pressure companies through what they choose to buy or not to buy in order to make them more ecologically friendly. I thought I'd spend a bit of time on the free speech question as well, and particularly about race and religious issues. Yeah. Given that I am noticeably brown on the panel, I mean, together with...
No, but please do. I would have reminded you anyway.
Yeah. Different shades of brown, as they say. I think those are important issues, but I also think that sometimes freewheeling free speech is not necessarily the best solution to some of those deeply sensitive issues, because we're dealing with issues that are not just logical ones, they are deeply emotive, they cater to, you know, the limbic part of the brain, not just the frontal cortex. And what I mean by that is these are not purely logical, reasoned issues. If people don't trust each other, if there are feelings of mutual suspicion, no amount of debate and mutual persuasion is going to persuade them that someone else is to be trusted.
But what about a simple idea of starting a little camp for children?
Well, yeah, so I was just about to get to that. You know, so I think there are opportunities where we need to then create spaces where there is a safe space for interaction, but I'm not sure that throwing people straight into, you know, a debate or a contestation of ideas is the best way to do it. I volunteer with a group called Explorations into Faiths, which is run out of the Southeast CDC, and we have no website. We don't send out mass email blitzes to get people involved, because we find that if you're not ready for interreligious dialogue, the last thing you want to do is be thrown into it, because then you will be put off forever, and you're never actually going to come back to a space where you can have that kind of interaction.
But Aaron, I'm going to press you here, but what about a camp for kids?
Well, yeah. So we're actually doing a camp for kids this year in June. We ran one in 2007. We did a forum in 2009. We're going to do another one this year, because we find that that's a good age to start, you know, especially for people around just above 12.
So briefly, I mean, do they pay for it? Where do they come from?
The CDC is not that keen on making money out of this. You know, the real important thing is to find people whose parents in particular are at least willing to have them there. And we find that if you start small, with a group of just 50, have them interact with each other and realize that there is a safe space where they can not just appreciate, but celebrate the difference that others have, then you can actually end up with a very, very strong group of ambassadors who tell the stories outside as well. So I do think free speech is important. I think speech is becoming freer in Singapore by the day. But I do think that when you're dealing with deeply rooted issues like that, we need to calibrate how free the speech is, because otherwise people don't feel that it's as safe an environment as they need it to be.
And if I gently come in here, I'm just going to move on to Elim, and my second boss in the room has given me a green light for an extension of 15 minutes. Right. So Elim, let's pick on. But I'm glad you picked eco-capitalism and the freedom of speech, so let's move it on. Sure.
Well, for the question of how to get started, join YSE, Young Social Entrepreneurs, next year, camp next year, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah, they're happy. And then, like I said, you know, the fund to get yourself started, you can get it from YSE as well. And then we thank Willie for that support of the fund as well. So we have to go around and you know, really ask for ideas. I think last year I challenged the team behind SIF and said we have to get a seed fund for our young entrepreneurs to get started. And then they say how, where, what? And then they found Willie and, you know, AP Ventures, and therefore they managed to get the fund to give you the startup fund. So you have to start with an idea. And I think a few of you have ideas how to get started. Some topics you may have to start smaller, gather a few people together and start, you know, discussing the topic that you want to discuss, because some are a little bit more sensitive, especially with race and religion. You can't do it on mass email or on your Facebook, because you'll get everybody firing back at you. But you want to get, you see, it's not about just bringing up issues. We need solutions. That's why social entrepreneurs are here, because we need to provide for solutions. It's very easy to point, we have problem with this, we have problem with that. I think many of you have read on the newspaper yesterday, you know, we talk about the next 10 hawker centers as a social enterprise model. You know, everybody is pointing and saying it can't be possible, it cannot be, it cannot this. And I said, okay, we go back to the 107 old hawker centers that we have. Or do you want to have change? Right? What do we want? And whether we could come up with solutions. So I think, you know, where do you want to get started? 6 years ago, nobody knew what social entrepreneurship was about in Singapore. 8 years ago, we started entrepreneurship, remember? Action Committee for Entrepreneurship. And then 6 years ago, I was introduced to this concept, social entrepreneurship. I said, what is it, you know? And I was brought to SCORE World Forum, as well as Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. And that's where I met, you know, Kun Michai. And then I said, wow, these are all social entrepreneurs. And I said, you know, I want to be like them. And I said, the question I asked the person who is a member of parliament, Penny Low, and I said, why don't we have this in Singapore? She said, you want to have it? Let's go back and start Social Innovation Park. And then we started Social Innovation Park. We started a forum, because I said, the forum there, why don't we have it in Singapore? And then every time you ask a question, it gets done. Every time you have an idea, it gets done. And the team was formed. Daryl and Denise and all are here. They get the Global Social Innovators Forum started. And then we roped in Augustine as well. And then we started to talk, and then we started to give out as many leaders as we can, social enterprises model. And soon, everything else happened. You have your Social Enterprise Association, you have, SIF coming up with, the program. Everyone the fire just gets started. But it starts from an idea. And you ask why, what, and then what is the next action you need to take. And then start talking to everyone. Because somebody will lead you to somebody, and somebody will lead you to somebody, and your idea will be able to run. So I think that's very important. Take that action. Find a solution. If you don't have a solution, go out there. Today you have Google. Everything that I don't have, I click Google and I try to learn from everybody else as well. And you can just write an email, and then everybody will get you somewhere as well. Right?
If I can just gently come in here, Elim. So if you're impatient, I think it was a question from our friend from Canada, and you can't wait for the next program, you can always walk up to any of the people here from the Singapore International Foundation and start a conversation. But I think Elim nicely sums up the other question as well about networking. You see, one of the things I noticed about these young people who are here, they are all from different countries. Am I right? You're all from different countries, right? Singapore, anybody from Malaysia? Malaysia, Indonesia? Philippines? Well, I know there's one person here from Thailand, all right? So, but I think, it's interesting. I'm getting people from Canada and all these, places that's very nice, it's great. But then there's a lot of work to be done closer in the region, right? In this neighborhood. So maybe you should really try to network, and they are easy to identify. They're wearing these T-shirts, and so you can walk up to them and network with them. But you need to continue the conversation, all right? And Elim is talking from experience. Trust me. For the time I've met many of these people, they are practitioners. They've gone through hard knocks. I'm going to keep Kun Michai for the final word, but Willie, you're next. You can pick on any of the issues. I think we're nicely ticking off.
There are two left, right? Just very quickly, for the question on, I guess, Penang, Singapore versus the US, you're giving an example of cafes and restaurants. Yeah. Apart from the fact that a lot of cafes and restaurants is a very competitive space, I would say that there are a lot of cafes and restaurants claiming to be social enterprises, which are actually more commercial than they are social. Just because you run a cafe and you give 10% of your profits to charity, it's a good thing, but I would say that actually is very good marketing, as opposed to saying that it's a social enterprise. So if you are very commercially minded, I guess you'd be less likely to want to share your secrets. On the arts question, the difficulty of measuring benefits and impact is actually not restricted to the arts sector. Actually, the whole non-profit sector has the issues, and there are a lot of research and work going on right now to try and see whether the industry can do a better job of it. Unlike the commercial sector, where everything kind of boils down to the bottom line, the profits, it's actually very difficult to try and distinguish one non-profit from another in terms of the measurement of that impact. And as to whether social enterprise or social entrepreneurship applies to the arts sector, it also comes back to a question of definition. If you define a social enterprise as basically a business with a social mission, then the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no, depending on exactly what is the art cost. But if you define social entrepreneurship in terms of, I guess, action-oriented social awareness, I think it absolutely applies to the art sector. It's just a question of how do you turn into action whatever is important in terms of the art cost.
Can I just jump in here? Sorry, on the arts question. The government recently received a report called the Arts and Culture Strategic Review, which was done up by a committee of many different people from the private sector, from practitioners as well, and some members of government. I think you'll find it interesting. Deborah, right, who asked that question?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think one of the spirit of that report was art everywhere, all the time, for everyone. And I think the idea is to really spread it as much as we possibly can. And a key part of that is about support for emerging artists and ensuring that they have a part to play in making that scene much more vibrant. So I do think that is a scene that's evolving quite quickly as well.
Can I safely say the three panel members who have spoken are all Singaporeans, right? So now we get an out-of-the-box intervention, Kun Michai. You're hearing all these people. I can safely say this. He's going to just turn all your problems into opportunities, Seriously. So let's hear from you, sir.
Thank you. You expect too much from a Thai.
No. You're being too nice. But can I just say one thing, and I just really, you should Google him on YouTube and you'll see what I'm saying. Tell them about what changed you. It was when you were a young boy in school yourself, and you felt bored, you wanted things different, and then I saw this project that you're going to do with kids, and they're going to come and stay in a place, and then they're going to have to move around, and if they want a chicken, they're going to go and kill it, and eat it if you want it, That was all interesting stuff, but something happened when he was a young person himself that is, led to a lot of things that he's talking about today. So there's not enough time, my friends, to do everything in today's session. So you really need to do a lot of research when you go back. But back to you, sir.
Well, let me begin by saying that I come from a very unique country. It has never been colonized. Maybe we should have been. Our traffic would be better.
And you have less coup.
And did you know that Thailand offered foreign assistance to America in 1861, before when USAID was even born? So 1861, our King Rama IV, who was probably the only statesman at the time, wanted to offer foreign assistance to America for a very simple reason, because we wanted something back from America. That's what foreign assistance is all about, even for the Singapore government, all right? Because Thailand was surrounded by the French on one side and the British on the other, and all of you guys know all about that here, and Thailand felt threatened. So how could we get some good advice from somebody? And America stood out because they kicked out the British and kept the French at bay. We said that would be a very good consultant to us. So the king offered foreign assistance in the form of elephants, because that was the best thing we ever had at the time was the elephant. And a letter was sent to President Buchanan at the time, and the reply came back, because there was no DHL, came back from President Lincoln, one president later, saying, Your Majesty, thank you very much for your kind offer of elephants, etc. It's in the Library of Congress. And I think the Thai embassy should give out this is fantastic. It's probably the best thing about Thailand. Anyway, the president of the US, President Lincoln, wrote back and said, Your Majesty, we're extremely thankful for what you have offered for us and friendship and so on. However, Your Majesty's suggestion that the elephants to be able to breed in the forest of America, it's too cold, they would not survive. And when we need transportation, we have steam engines already. In a very polite way, telling our king that we had offered something they didn't need. And America has been doing that to us ever since. All right? Now, so that's Thailand for you. In terms of a couple of things I want to answer. So the first one is that I think it's important to learn how to say or perceive what is enough. For some people, there's no such thing as enough. And I feel very sorry for those people. They're already rich. They're already going to hell. And here they are buying an express ticket to hell even faster. They're already going to hell anyway. Now, I think it's important to know when is enough. Some of the houses I have in Thailand can raise about 100 buffaloes. So big. I don't know if you have them in Singapore or not, but the whole point is that we've got to teach our children, the next generation, it's probably too late for this generation, of what is enough. And the other one is about sharing. You've got these MBAs right around the world, in my country and yours. What it does is it teaches smart people to be greedy and avaricious. So the MBAs ought to be changed the name from Business Administration and Philanthropy School. Add philanthropy to it. We want you to make more money. We want you to be successful, but we want you to share. I think it's very, very important. And when it's just even a dog knows when to stop eating. But a lot of humans don't even know when to stop. They're not even as good as dogs. I think this is very important. Are we going that way? Is that what we want our children to be? Is that what our ambitions are for people in this room? I don't think so. I think we have to not only tell ourselves, but begin to do it to others. Therefore, you must start young. It's too late for all those people chasing the millions. We've got to start young. These are 4- or 5-year-old kids. Get them to learn how to share. We have a program, we call it the Toy Library, where we get urban kids, get their parents, ask them to give some of their toys, their books, and they go to upcountry, and then they get used by the kids. But the kids who use the toys must do community service. Pick up garbage, plastic bags, plant trees, sweep streets. Then you can borrow the toys for 1 week. And they keep the village clean ever since, after that. And that's just an example. So they receive and they also give. We need to get our kids to learn how to give. And for instance, in Singapore and Malaysia and all the other countries, my country, Philippines, Canada, you name it, we should get secondary school kids to go out at least 1 day of their holiday to teach primary school kids on something that they're good at. And then you begin to practice. If you're talking about corporate social responsibility, CSR, it will not work unless you have ISR, individual social responsibility. And that can only begin when you're young. You've got the alphabet, right? A for apple, B for, what's B for now? C for cat. It should be for condom, I know. But what you ought to do is take a look. How can we adjust to make it a new friendly alphabet? A would be for something, B for something. Obviously, G should be for giving. S should be for sharing, whatever. A whole new series. These are the things that children have to experience anyway, the alphabet. Let's use it. There are many, many ways of doing it. And I think that use edutainment, but start young. And I think that of all the countries in Asia, the greatest opportunity to produce a nation of people who will share and give amongst the Asian countries is Singapore. You've got a lot of stuff ready. And then finally, I would love to start a social enterprise. Let's call it a multi-racial social enterprise. 7 nationalities. Why only the 3 in Singapore? Get the Thais and Filipinos and others together so we enjoy the differences. And I hate to use the word, and I hope you don't use it in your life at all, that is tolerant. Oh, they're very tolerant. They say, oh, the Thais are very tolerant. I said, that's a damn insult. Don't ever use it again. Tolerant, what does that mean? I tolerate you and you tolerate me. What a term, right? So let's change it to the word accepting. I hope that my people, the Thais, they might be dumb, but they're very accepting. All right? So I think these are the things that we need to change and you need to change. And don't look to the generation that ruled you. Look to the next generation who will have a pretty tough life and get them involved and to do the things that you're doing. So get to young kids. And that's my suggestion. And I think the other one was, how did I get the people to participate in the first so-called social enterprise?
You're very good, Kumichai. I wrote it down, yes, the population and getting them to come.
We got to them by saying, look, this is what we think you need. It was family planning service. We asked them, who would you trust in your village to give you information and supply you the contraceptives for a small amount? 3 baht, 5 baht, and so on. Very, very small. And if you couldn't afford it, you must do community service. So no one was denied. And they were involved. So we went to the people that they selected. And then we went to the teachers. We trained 320,000 rural school teachers about family planning. We came up with a new alphabet, B for birth, C for condom, I for IUD, and all that. And we had a new song, the equivalent of Jingle Bells, and had every contraceptive method in it, and taught to young primary school kids. And we had a snakes and ladders game. You throw dice and you land on mother takes the pill every night, very good mother, and move ahead 5. Okay? We call it the family welfare vitamin. Mother takes it for the welfare of the family. We totally desexed it. Uncle buys condom. Well, very good, uncle, move ahead 6. Then further on, uncle gets drunk, doesn't use condom, come back, start again. So all those things in breastfeeding, immunization, all the other things, and kids want to win. And they must remember what makes them win. They also must remember what makes them lose. So snakes and ladders game about being good, about philanthropy. Back to the basics. Very, very simple.
Kumichai, thank you so much. And I'm just going to stretch it just a little bit more and make my panel work hard for this one last round. You're going to listen to the whole bunch of questions that came in, and then you're going to have to pick which one you're going to respond to. And of course, Kumichai, you have the final word. But first of all, Tim Hammonds is over there. He's doing the mind map. Look at what started. We started, remember, in the afternoon, and look where he is now. So thank you. Can we give him a round of applause for doing this great mind map? Tim, this is the second time I'm seeing you at work, my friend, and I salute you. It's really, thank you. Yeah, he's really taking down the notes, you know, and you've got the technology as well. All right, questions, panel. So, you know, they asked you, how can you channel your love for writing, reading, poetry into a social enterprise? What social enterprise opportunities can arise from there? So the love, poetry, and Aaron, you said you want to tackle it. Maybe you might want to think about it. If I set up a social enterprise, this is another one. If I set up a social enterprise, maybe a school with a minimum fee to support the school, how can we manage if the client is not able to pay? I'm saying this as loud and clear as I can, so you know the panel can think about it. Next one, what is the biggest challenge that you have faced so far in managing the social enterprise and how you overcome it? I guess that was meant for Kun Michai, and he shared with you his version of Snakes and Ladders, which personally I was controlling myself from laughing, but it was really good. You know, whoever is a business person out here should be seriously talking contract with him and getting that game, you know. PDA started many years ago to address poverty in rural Thailand through family planning initiatives, and it's expanded to include many other initiatives. What is your greatest challenge today in doing this work today, and how do you think it can be overcome? That's for you, Kun Michai. Next question, how do you measure the social impact of social enterprises, and how do you enable funders and donors to believe in the worth of the social impact and invest in it, right? You know, I told you, like, many questions who came in, and it's still coming. Social enterprise, another one, works best in a multidisciplinary environment. I'm interested to know how the creative community, like designers and architects, can help business aspect of social enterprises, which is a strong focus in today's forum. Can you give a few case studies to elaborate this point further? Thank you for that one. Hi, Mr. Michai defined social enterprise when all the profits will go back to the business social cause. However, how do we get investors to invest in a social enterprise and grow our cause if investors don't get compensated for the risk involved? All social enterprises have to start somewhere with financial support. All right. Another one, how could one create a viable business that is sustainable in Singapore, where rentals are high and manpower cost expensive, where we can survive with a stiff competition? All right. Okay, let me just finish this. Qualities of a social entrepreneur. How do you nurture such qualities in youth today? You heard part of the answers from there. Social enterprises have business. Just wonder where SEs to work, where social entrepreneurs to work for some companies first to gain the business sense, since it is less risky and costly. Finally, I'm keen to start a social enterprise, a casket company employing ex-offenders. I wonder if there is anyone else keen to do this together, and this is coming from Martin. Oh wow, another one, Mr. Michai. What's the rationale behind non-incentivizing social entrepreneurs with substantial financial reward? We seem to be fine with founder of Angry Birds making millions. Why shouldn't people solving big world problems be able to seek financial rewards? That's it. I did justice and read all your messages. You're a great audience. We tried this today for the first time. I think the next time SIF does this, we'll take this one level higher with technology. But you're a wonderful group, seriously. You stayed the course, you stood patiently, you asked the questions. I don't know how these panelists are going to do this. It's going to be a miracle, short of a miracle. But Aaron, you want to give it a go, and then we'll work our way down to Elim, and then Willie, and finally Kun Michai. You have the final word.
Yeah, I was jotting down the ones I was struck by on my phone. So if I stare at this, I'm not reading my SMS, I promise. First of all, the first question on channeling love for writing and reading, I suppose as someone who writes poetry, I should answer that question. I've been very blessed. I've always been in a position where, you know, work was stable enough and I didn't need my poetry and reading to pay. And I'm quite glad for that, because I'm not sure how much fun I would have with it if I also knew that I had to do it to pay the bills. But I'll share with you some examples of what I guess I've done to turn some of that into community-related work as well. When I was an undergrad, I was part of a group called Jakari in the UK. And it sounds very militant, you know, it stands for Joint Action Committee Against Racial Intolerance. But actually what we did was we read to students from ethnic minority families who were really clever but just didn't speak English. and therefore they found it really difficult to deal with not just English in school, but even things like maths, because they couldn't even understand their test questions. So love of reading was a great thing to channel there, because I wasn't doing anything I wouldn't do anyway. I was reading and helping someone learn to read, and watching the spark of realization happen as they learned the beauty of words. So that for me was one way in which you can make this, very much a part of serving a community. SINDA at the moment, the Singapore Indian Development Association, runs a Project Read as well, where we do essentially the same thing with students whose reading levels are far below what one would expect at their age. Same thing with writing. I think while writing can be seen as a deeply specialized thing, it can also be a form of catharsis. And some of my friends I know who have started to use poetry and play acting as ways of dealing with students from difficult families, backgrounds that need some kind of assistance and counseling. But rather than do that in a very direct way, we get them to channel through creative expression. Are they producing things that are Nobel-worthy? Not always. Sometimes they do produce quite brilliant stuff. But I think that can be an example, again, of where there is an adjacency between the creative writing and the community-related work, which can end up with quite powerful results. I wanted to say one quick thing about the creative community and how it can help, because there was a question on that too, right? Architects, designers. I actually think that the design mentality is one that is going to be much, much more important for all enterprise, including social enterprise in the future. What do I mean by the design mentality? First of all, focusing on your users without compromise. Unrelenting user and human-focused design, I think, will be critical for all of you. That's what we're doing, right? Essentially, we're creating services, whether in social or commercial enterprise, that meets human needs. And that means not just the need you think people have, but what they actually need. And that means talking to them, hearing their stories, finding out what actually makes them happy, sad, excited, frustrated, and then catering to those needs. So I think that is something designers understand, and it's something that all of us could do well to understand as well. The other thing that I think designers and creative people get is the fact that they don't wait. They just get out and do. They write a draft, no matter how awful it is, and then they work on it again. A potter will create, and then he'll look at it and say, oh, I don't really like it, I'll do it again. But the idea is to prototype as fast as you can, and this links to what Elim you were talking about earlier. How do you take that first step, right? Well, take the first step. It won't be perfect, but at least you started, and then from there you'll be able to work and refine and improve and make things better. So I think that is something the creative community has, which I hope can very rapidly diffuse into other parts of our sectors, not just the social sector, but the private sector and in government as well. I'll stop there.
No, but thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you for tackling some of the questions. Eileen.
Well, for me, it's just a lot of ideas, and that's picked up. But I just want to share a bit about Kun Michai's partnership idea, on ex-offenders as well as HIV patient. We have a lot of ideas, like you said, it's just matching them and, as you know, and see more and more things. So we've been always supporting, let's say ex-offenders. But, his idea about taking in terms of partnership where you take someone who is, ex-offender and someone who is out there, who is a normal person, to partner them in a business, and Kun Michai gives out funding, right, for them to start a little business of their own, to develop from there. And then it's encouraging each other for partnership and to develop the business. But it's also a form of encouragement. And that's something that, so when I listen to ideas, I put them together, and then I go around and think, how can I use it as a business model? I think your question is, how do you take certain things into an idea, right? Even in your poetry and all that. What I did was, I'm in a retail business, and I usually ask people for feedback. And one day I said, why don't I collect, what the youth are going through and write about it and send it to me and compile it into a book. And eventually it became a book. I share with someone, and they decide to print it for us. And then I share it again with somebody else. They say, well, let's make it into a radio program of youth issues. And then let's make it into a theater program of, live forum theater. And then videos and everything. And today, from the first book to the second book, and we just produced a third book on youth issues on overcoming depression. So sometimes it can be a very basic idea. It's just how do you work on it and then develop it. But you talk to people and they'll be able to give you ideas. I know it's very generic because, there's so many questions that we need to answer. And now I'm sitting here, I'm also thinking about Kun Mechai's idea about partnership. How can we collaborate and, create a partnership to get the idea going? And I know many of us are helping ex-offenders as well. Many of us are also helping with HIV patients. These are reality of issues. Then, from there, maybe we can add more to ideas. And that's where we develop the ideas from there. The part about cost of business being high and lack of manpower, which is very true. So for you to take that next step into your idea of starting another cafe or another idea of service industry, just do remember about the cost. And that's the reason why do go and read about, because it's too long, but do go and read the papers. I think today they'll be covering the issues as well. Yesterday, the whole spread of Straits Time about me, the team of panel trying to make the hawker center as a place to start your business. So that if you want to start a business of F&B for somebody who is less advantaged, your cost of business startup in a hawker center may be more affordable than for you to rent a space. So we go out there and we see what we can do. So startup costs, to lower your startup costs, and whether you can garner enough people to be your supporter to start your business as well. So, we're looking for Scape is another place. Many of you know the Youth Hub. We're going to convert the basement of Scape into 100 square feet shop so that it's affordable for you to start your business as well, even your social enterprise. So, do think about some of these ideas because we don't want you to get trapped. At the same time, I feel bad if, you guys start a social enterprise or, you become entrepreneurs and you get stuck in a high cost of business out there. So this is something you need to look out for. Thanks.
Just to build on the Scape idea, Scape's smaller cousin is the Youth Council's Academy, and that is designed to provide some kind of space for people. If all you need is a whiteboard and a Wi-Fi connection, right, then that's going to be there if you need that for your social enterprises. So I think we're trying to create this ecosystem, right, where we can support as much of these enterprises as we can.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for coming in. And I'm just amazed. I had to write all these things out, but Elim remembers all these points that you brought up. Willie?
Let me take a question on the biggest challenge for social enterprises. I think based on the research that's out there, it appears that the biggest issue actually is just business capability. And I think a large part of it is because most social enterprises tend to be started by people from the charity sector who have the right heart and they want to try and create something which is sustainable funding for their charities or the charities that they are, they are aligned with. Unfortunately, because these are charity people, they are not actually quite businessmen, and they often start off on the wrong footing, where they get what I would call unfair advantages. They get free funding to, free capital to get started. They actually get volunteers, free labor, and even if they do have staff normally work for probably less than market rates. They probably get people who buy from them because they are a social enterprise and are very sympathetic to them. So they get used to the whole idea that actually this is like an extended charity, and therefore they don't think in terms of competitive products which produce quality at affordable or at the appropriate prices. And because in time, right, when the funding runs out, the business is unable to survive on its own. So I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that a social enterprise is an enterprise. It is a business enterprise, and therefore it has got to be, it has to make sense from a business standpoint, and it's got to be managed like a business. And I think related to the question is this question of how do you make a viable business in Singapore with these high rentals, high wages, especially compared to a place like Thailand. Now you must remember that although our cost here is higher in terms of wages and rental than Thailand, our prices here are also higher. And there are businesses here which are viable. 77th Street is very viable in Singapore, and because customers do pay prices that compensate you for that cost. So it comes back to, if you think like a business, you have to figure out a way in which the business has to make sense. Actually, there are two other questions I just want to touch on regarding this whole question of the spirit of what a social enterprise or social entrepreneurship is. The question about how do you get investors, if they do not get any returns, right, in a social investment, and how do you get people to work in a social enterprise if they do not get any rewards from it by way of return for the dividends? And it comes back to what's the whole notion of social enterprise. It's to create a business which will benefit a social cause by people who are socially minded. And the fact is that there are people in this world who actually cares enough about social causes and about society where they don't have to be rewarded to the hilt, right, for every money or investment that they put in. And in fact, I would say that that mood, from where I sit, right, looking at the sector, is happening across the world. Because of all the excesses of capitalism, a newer form of compassionate capitalism is coming about. So much so that this whole notion that one doesn't have to do everything and be financially rewarded to the maximum for it is something which is pervading not just social enterprise and the social sector, but it's also crossing into the mainstream organizations. And there's a lot of things which are happening on that front. So I think we are actually entering into a much more compassionate and a better world. So there are good people out there, and if you are not like that, then you shouldn't be involved with social enterprise to start off with.
Very nice. I couldn't have asked for a better exit line from our three panelists. Kunmichai, you have the last one.
I'd like to just add on to what Willis just said, that there are people who will part with their money happily and ask for excitement in return rather than cash. They have enough cash they want to do with it. Just like people who donate to certain causes. They're saying goodbye to the money. This is saying goodbye to the money, but your money grows and you get excitement back. When you give to the Red Cross, it's gone. Okay, this is the difference. And I've just started a company called Equality for All in Thailand. It's a company, and we are going to buy stock on the shares on the stock exchange. The minimum number required by law is probably about 10, right? And then we're going to get lots of people to go to the annual general meeting of all these listed companies, and we're going to say to the chairman, it's all linked, and we have a good network. Mr. Chairman, why do we not have a woman on the board of directors of our company? What's the case? This is not acceptable. We're going to follow you up. We're going to have articles. We're going to follow up with the press. And we're going to come up with our own e-letter called STAR, looking for a star. 3 stars, 2 star, 1 star, or still looking for a star. We're going to grade you on your equality on those issues. And if next year we come back, you've not changed, we give you 1 more year. But the 3rd year, if that is still the same, we're going to tell all the people, consumers of the country, that to consider not purchasing from your goods and services from your company. It's going to hurt them. And hit where it hurts, because money talks. If we need to change, that's the way to do it. Now, my point is that the people buying shares here, they want excitement, they want social change. They don't want money back. They don't want profit. Yeah? They want something more than money. They want change. And that's the whole point. And if you're going to do social enterprise, you have to have a population of people who want change, who want good things, not just money, 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 That's dull. So that's a point I think is very, very important. Now, think of new things and do new things. Paul, my colleague at the back there, did you bring any memory stick with you? No, you didn't. We have a very popular memory stick that looks just like a condom. We call it a memory dick. And again, it's a new idea. All right, I just wanted to share that with you. And the other one is that how can you start a school and not charge them more? What I have done is very simple. I just don't charge any money at all, and I have a social enterprise on the side to do business so that the profits from the social enterprise will help pay for the operating costs of the school. We have 2 social enterprises, the one that starts up the school and the second one that starts to do business so that from year 6 onwards it'll pay for the running costs of the school. We don't want people to pay. If they're poor, don't have to pay anything. Pay it forward so that by coming they get something by giving it to somebody else. And the other one that I think about youth, I would love to find companies in Singapore. If any place, it's probably Singapore, for each company to sponsor two youth, two social entrepreneurs who are still dreaming, thinking what it is, and help to guide them. Just two. How much is that going to cost? Each company can think of it. Let them help to sponsor, help to nurture two future social entrepreneurs. Or might be more, but start off with two. I don't know whether there's anything I don't remember the offenders. We call it the positive partnership. We started off 8-9 years ago in a project called a positive partnership. Somebody living with HIV partners a person who's not infected of their choice. So it's maybe a sister, a brother, a friend, and then the one who's not infected gives encouragement and helps to create understanding in the community, and that they do well in business. So that's just one. We have about 1,000 pairs doing it. We now just start one with the people who are in prison and start training them, and then when they come out, a person of their choice who's also been trained, do business together, because nobody will hire, in my country, in most countries, somebody with a record who's been to jail. And of all people, they're the ones who need our help most, because they don't have the regular opportunity from a person who's being poor. So that's another area we need to look at, and let them be self-employed. So we train them, so you can have these mini farms and whatever, ice cream, and there's no need to say, look, I've been to jail. Who needs to know? Just do it and then give them a new life. Those are the things I think we can do, and it's a great joy. Now, we have to find the money to sponsor those sorts of activities, or there are donors who give us the money to do that. And we often, this is the case, we pay for the staff costs by our own social enterprise, and the investment activities in the villages, the schools and so on, come from donors. That can also be done, separation. Is there anything else that I should mention?
No, so actually, I mean, I have so many ideas here. It's really wonderful listening to you. But any parting thoughts for the people here, especially the young ones?
And finally, if I may, you said, how do we get knowledge? Go to people who know business. I've started a program in Thailand, luckily with the help of a foundation in the US, whereby we get individuals or NGOs to say, who want to have social enterprise, go to a company and say, look, we need your help. Can you supply us a couple of smart young people? And so that we would end up with a business plan, a certain product, goods or services, and then come to me with a committee that will judge. And if you're good, you get $50,000 US to start off. And so this first one, you go to the company. Another one, a company picks an NGO or a social enterprise on their own, but they must do the same thing. So that's another way of doing it. We are not experts. We have a heart, but we don't have the brain of a business. Get somebody who's in business to help to do this.
Well, with that final word, I have no idea how I'm going to sum this up, but let me try. I think two key phrases came from Kun Michai. I mean, first of all three panelists gave us excellent responses, and I've been taking down a few ideas. By the way, if you're wondering what I'm scribbling here, it's actually ideas for stories, right? So what is enough? That's what Kun Michai said. And the need to teach our children about sharing. That says a lot. Seriously. I mean, if you want to take back something, that's a lot, all right? All the rest made us laugh, but they also made us think. You think about the idea of the toy library, and I'll just say that, and then you think where this can go, just the project of a toy library. The phrase CSR out, ISR in. Remember that one? Yeah. I don't have to tell you what ISR stands for. If you were listening carefully, you know what it means. And another one, I want to throw in the word choice. And I'm glad Elim picked up on the offenders and it got expanded. When I had to move, we picked the movers that was run by ex-offenders. So you actually have a choice who you call, which company did you get, you know. And that's how you start making the difference, you see. It's in your hands. And so, and a lot of people do use movers, all right. The idea about the Thai listing the company, you said, Equality for All in Thailand. Well, I'm looking forward to doing that story. That's going to go to my business journalist for sure. We see how that turns out. The memory stick, I say memory stick, he said something else. Maybe the next SIF forum, we should have it rated 18 and above. It's getting more and more exciting. But, please do talk to Kun Michai and his team at the back and get more ideas from there. And, finally, 2 companies sponsoring 2 youth. That sounds like a great reality TV show. 2 companies sponsoring 2 youth. Not to overemphasize, but there are a couple of TV series going on right now on television, Invest in Me. So, there are very interesting ideas here that have come up from this program where you don't have to be a social enterprise, but you can be in the media and do something about it. Let me end by quoting from the speech from Jean. And I say this with great sincerity. The project that she referred to where, they're going to be sending Singaporean volunteers to support PDI's work in Thailand. Next month, 3 teachers and an expert in pedagogy will conduct workshops in mathematics, science, and English for 60 teachers at Kun Michai's Bamboo School. Is this in Bangkok, Kun Michai? Outside.
In the northeast.
In the northeast. In the northeast. You should seriously consider this. Why? Because as a journalist in my humble years, 4 times I've covered SIF work.